President Trump's efforts to remove the transnational Venezuela gang, Tren de Aragua, it's now being backed up by a coalition of 26 state attorney generals. In a brief filed before the D.C. District Court of Appeals, this group of attorney generals is requesting that the district court's temporary restraining order on Trump's deportation effort be stayed during the appeals process. So how might this brief influence the courts? And what might be the next legal steps in an effort to rid the U.S. of this horrible group of gang members? Well, here to review the facts of this case is Alabama's Attorney General, Steve Marshall. He is one of the 26 AGs who co-signed the brief. And in addition to his responsibilities as a state attorney general, Marshall serves as a member of the executive committee of the Republican Attorney Generals Association. Attorney General Marshall, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Good to see you, Jody. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to see you as well. So what are the arguments that are provided in this brief against the temporary restraining order?
Yeah, Jody, in some ways, the question is, what are the arguments against, right? For the Democrats to somehow say that a terrorist organization that is committing crimes against the people of this country, engaging in drug trafficking, human trafficking, and authorizing violence on law enforcement, that somehow or another we want to stop the Trump administration from removing these individuals from our country. And so it is astonishing to me that the arguments are being made that this president hasn't acted very consistent with his mandate, and that is to reverse the horrific trend of the Biden administration and allowing individuals to come into this country who want to do harm. And very surprised by the decision of the D.C. Circuit initially in being able to stop or attempting to stop the administration from taking this action, because this is a national security issue. I mean, this is a violent extremist gang that has been identified as a foreign terrorist organization in which there's a direct proclamation from the president identifying the harm that they can cause on the American people. There is no dispute that they came into this country unlawfully for a bad purpose with a direct connection to the leadership of the Venezuelan government, but yet somehow that isn't enough. Clearly, this president, under the Constitution as well as under the Alien Enemies Act, has the ability to remove individuals that have invaded this country to conduct bad operations, and that's exactly what this gang's doing.
Yeah, extremely well said. And in fact, your office mentioned that the president has the constitutional right to protect our national security. He has the right to protect American lives that have been put at risk by this and other terrorist members. So in what ways, I mean, I think we all see some of the things, but just how widespread is this problem in the U.S. among citizens?
Yeah, I think we're still learning. You know, there's no doubt that these gangs become embedded in communities, and particularly when we have no idea who's crossed the border, we have no ability to contact these individuals or know, in fact, where they're going. We're still learning it. And sadly, we learn it as a result of, for example, the murder of Laken Riley, from one of TDA gang members taking the life of this innocent college student, where Congress has to respond by passing a law. I mean, that shows you the impact already this gang has had in our country. You know, we've all seen the video of Colorado and what's going on there with the takeover of an apartment complex. We've heard the stories from law enforcement across the country where they have a presence in multiple states. And, you know, Jody, is the expectation of Democrats that we just simply sit back and wait for them to commit more harm on the citizens of this country? Or do we expect a president to show leadership like we've seen from President Trump to be able to take affirmative action to be able to remove these individuals from our shores? We think it's not only an appropriate act by President Trump, but one that's needed in our country to ensure public safety. I have no doubt that we'll ultimately prevail, but this is just one of the steps in getting the courts convinced that he's right.
So what's the next step after filing this brief? And do you think this ends up in the Supreme Court?
I could definitely see it in the Supreme Court. The next step is for the D.C. Circuit to determine whether or not they want to set aside the injunction that this Democratic judge has done. But Judge, there's also a bigger issue here that I think you hear around multiple of the lawsuits against President Trump, is whether or not a singularly sitting district judge has the ability to stop policy at a nationwide level. We've already seen the court very much opposed, at least some of the conservative members opposed to this power being vested in a singular district judge. It's the mechanism in which Democrats were able to hamper the Trump administration during their prior tenure, and one that I hope the court will weigh in on. If you look, for example, you and I have talked about the successful efforts of Republican AGs around Title IX and the improper regulation that came from the Biden administration trying to open up our locker rooms and our bathrooms. We did that in individual cases with individual states suing, not with one judge stopping the entire nation with one stroke of a pen.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think that is an excellent point that drives to the heart of this whole legal battle. It's a whole balance of powers argument that's at stake here, and that is a battle that must be resolved. We have three branches of government equally responsible, but for separate tasks in different jurisdictions. So I think that's an excellent point that you bring up. Thank you so much, Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall. Always great to have you. Appreciate your leadership and the other 25 attorney generals with you. Thanks for joining us on Washington Watch.
Thank you.